Imagine Earth, maybe 4 billion years ago. Totally alien, right? No trees, no birds, just volcanic chaos. Now picture today, this explosion of life everywhere. Our deep dive today tackles that incredible journey in between. We're digging into Unit 4 of Campbell Biology in Focus to chart the evolutionary history of life. It's foundational stuff, really helps you get a grip on, well, everything in biology.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to connect the dots for you, show how these tiny molecular shifts over vast timescales led to everything we see, from self-copying molecules to, us. It's a story of huge changes and really surprising turns.
Okay, let's dive right in. The very beginning, 4 billion years back. What did early Earth actually look like? And how did life, well, how did it even start from non-life?
Right, so early Earth was intense. Think of a primitive soup of chemicals. The atmosphere wasn't like today's. It was reducing, meaning electron adding, full of water vapor, nitrogen, CO2, methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and all this energized by lightning, UV radiation, just constant energy input. It was basically the perfect setup for simple organic molecules, like amino acids, to form spontaneously from inorganic stuff. Abiotic synthesis.
Okay, like the ingredients just cooking themselves.
Pretty much. And you've probably heard of the Miller-Urey experiment from 1953. They simulated these conditions, zapped the gases, and boom, amino acids, building blocks of protein.
Right, classic experiment.
But get this, a reanalysis in 2008 looked at Miller's other setups, one simulating volcanic eruptions, and they found way more amino acids, a much richer variety of organic compounds.
Ah, so maybe volcanic environments were even better hotspots for life's chemistry.
It certainly suggests that, yeah. And then these simple molecules started linking up, forming polymers like chains of amino acids or RNA nucleotides, just spontaneously on hot surfaces like sand or clay. No enzymes needed yet.
Okay, so we've got the building blocks and they're starting to link up. How do we get from that chemical soup to something that feels more like, well, life?
The next big step was packaging. Getting these molecules inside something, enter protocells. Think of them as droplets, little bubbles with membranes that could maintain a distinct internal chemistry. Keep the good stuff in,
Like the first little bags of life stuff.
Sort of, yeah. And we know lipids, fatty molecules, can spontaneously form these bubble-like vesicles in water. What's cool is that certain clays, which were common back then, actually speed up this process. They help these vesicles form, grow, and even sort of divide.
Wow. Okay, so chemistry is starting to look a bit like biology.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really key idea, the RNA world hypothesis. The thinking is that RNA, not DNA, was likely the first genetic material.
Why RNA?
Because RNA is incredibly versatile. It can store genetic info like DNA does, but it can also act as a catalyst, like an enzyme. These are called ribozymes.
So it could store the instructions and carry out the work.
Precisely. And crucially, it could self-replicate, make copies of itself. This means natural selection could start acting on these RNA molecules, favoring the ones that copied themselves faster or more accurately. This RNA world was likely the precursor to the more stable DNA world we have today.
Okay, so we've gone from chemicals to self-replicating membrane-bound proto-life. It's a huge leap. When do we see the first signs of actual bona fide living organisms in the record?
The earliest direct fossil evidence puts true life, prokaryotes, at about 3.5 billion years ago. We find these layered rock structures called stromatolites.
Right, those dome-shaped things you see sometimes.
Yeah, formed by the activity of ancient prokaryotes. And we also find individual fossilized prokaryotic cells. These tiny organisms, basically bacteria and archaea, had the whole planet to themselves for an incredible stretch, like 1.5 billion years.
1.5 billion years. Just prokaryotes.
Just prokaryotes. And they completely transformed Earth. Maybe their biggest impact was the oxygen revolution.
The arrival of oxygen.
Yeah, starting maybe 2.7 billion years ago, photosynthetic prokaryotes, the cyanobacteria, began producing oxygen as a waste product. Over millions of years, this built up in the atmosphere.
Which wasn't necessarily good news for everyone at the time.
Definitely not. Oxygen was toxic to many early anaerobic organisms. It caused a massive extinction event. But, and this is crucial, it also opened the door for cellular respiration using oxygen to get way more energy from food. That paved the way for larger, more complex life.
It's amazing these tiny, simple-looking cells literally terraform the planet. How did they manage to thrive for so long and in basically every environment imaginable?
Their superpower is their incredible metabolic diversity. They figured out how to eat or make energy from almost anything. Unlike eukaryotes, which mostly specialized later, prokaryotes explored pretty much every possible chemical pathway.
So not just photosynthesis.
Oh, far from it. You have photoautotrophs using light, sure, but also chemoautotrophs using inorganic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide from volcanic vents. Photoheterotrophs using light but needing organic carbon. Chemoheterotrophs, like us, consuming organic stuff, they covered all the bases.
And things like nitrogen fixation.
Exactly. Converting atmospheric nitrogen gas, which is unusable for most organisms, into ammonia that plants can use. Foundational for entire ecosystems. They basically engineered Earth's chemical cycles.
And they didn't just do it alone, right?
Okay.
You mentioned cooperation.
Right. Metabolic cooperation is huge for them. Some cyanobacteria, for example, form chains. Certain cells specialize in photosynthesis, which produces oxygen, while others, called heterocysts, specialize in nitrogen fixation, which is inhibited by oxygen. They separate the incompatible processes.
A tiny division of labor.
Yeah, and you also see this in biofilms, communities of bacteria sticking together, often encased in slime. Think dental plaque. This allows them to cooperate, resist antibiotics, and colonize surfaces.
Okay, so they're metabolically brilliant. But how do they evolve all these different tricks? They mainly reproduce asexually, right? Doesn't that limit variation?
That's a great question. While mutation combined with their incredibly fast reproduction rates does generate a lot of novelty, their real ace is genetic recombination. They swap DNA.
Swapping DNA.
3 main ways. One is transformation, where they just pick up bits of DNA floating around in the environment from dead cells. Another is transduction, where viruses, phages, accidentally carry bacterial genes from one cell to another.
Okay.
And the third is conjugation. This is direct transfer. One cell extends a little tube, a pilus, to another and passes DNA across, often on small circular pieces called plasmids.
Plasmids, like those carrying antibiotic resistance genes.
Exactly. This horizontal gene transfer, moving genes sideways between individuals, even distantly related ones, is a massive driver of prokaryotic evolution. It's why antibiotic resistance can spread so terrifyingly fast through bacterial populations. Think MRSA, resistant E. coli. That's horizontal gene transfer in action.
Wow. So these simple organisms are masters of adaptation. They set the stage biochemically and genetically. But what happens next? How do we get to the eukaryotes, the cells with the nucleus and all those compartments?
Right, the eukaryotic leap. The key difference is that internal complexity compartmentalization. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus housing the DNA and other membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria for energy, Golgi for processing, each doing a specialized job.
More organized.
Definitely. And they also have a much more dynamic cytoskeleton, allowing them to change shape, move actively, engulf things. This opened up totally new ways of living. We see chemical traces suggesting eukaryotes around 2.7 billion years ago, but the first widely accepted fossils are closer to 1.8 billion years old.
And eukaryotes are sometimes called combination organisms. What's that about? It sounds intriguing.
It is. It means they're fundamentally chimeras. Their genomes, their very essence, contain a mix of genes and traits derived from both archaea and bacteria.
How did that happen?
Through endosymbiosis. The leading hypothesis, overwhelmingly supported now, is that an ancestral host cell, likely an archaean or related to them, engulfed an aerobic bacterium, an alpha proteobacterium.
Engulfed it, like ate it.
Well, yes, but instead of digesting it, the bacterium somehow stuck around inside the host. It became an endosymbiont. And it was a game changer because this bacterium was great at using oxygen to generate energy.
Ah, the precursor to the mitochondrion.
Exactly. Over time, this endosymbiont evolved into the mitochondrion, the powerhouse of the eukaryotic cell. And this seems to have happened just once. All eukaryotes either have mitochondria or show evidence they once did.
Incredible. One massive merger event.
And it didn't stop there. Later, a similar thing happened again. A heterotrophic eukaryote, one that already had mitochondria, engulfed a photosynthetic cyanobacterium.
Leading to chloroplasts.
Precisely. That symbiosis gave rise to the plastids, including chloroplasts, making photosynthesis possible in eukaryotes like algae and plants. We even see weirder cases of secondary endosymbiosis, where a eukaryote swallowed another eukaryote that already had a plastid. It's like Russian dolls of symbiosis.
Evolution is wild.
Oh.
Hey, so we have these complex, single-celled eukaryotes. How do we get to multicellular life? Plants, animals, fungi. That seems like another huge jump.
It was, and it happened multiple times,
Yeah.
independently in different eukaryotic lineages, which tells you it must offer significant advantages under certain conditions.
So it wasn't just one invention.
Nope. Plants, fungi, animals, they all evolved multicellularity separately from single-celled ancestors. It often seems to have started with simple colonies, cells just sticking together after dividing.
Like a group project.
Sort of, but
Hmm.
true. Complex multicellularity involves cells differentiating, taking on specialized roles. What's fascinating looking at lineages like Volvox green algae is that it didn't necessarily require inventing loads of brand new genes.
Really? How then?
It was more about changes in how existing genes were used, regulating them differently for things like cell adhesion, communication between cells, programmed cell death, repurposing the existing genetic toolkit.
And for animals specifically, where did they come from?
The closest living relatives to animals are single-celled protists called choanoflagellates. They look strikingly similar to certain cells in sponges. And when you compare genomes, you find that proteins crucial for animal cells sticking together, cadherins, are built from protein domains also found in choanoflagellates, plus some key new bits. Again, it suggests evolution tinkered with existing parts to build something new.
So this burst of eukaryotic life,
Yeah.
especially the protists, the single-celled ones, what kind of impact did they have? Were they just sort of floating around, or did they change things?
Oh, they change things massively. Protists are incredibly important ecologically. Photosynthetic ones, diatoms, dinoflagellates, multicellular algae, carried out about 30% of global photosynthesis. They're the base of most aquatic food webs.
Wow, 30%, that's huge.
It is. And when the populations get out of whack, you see major effects. Think red tides, blooms of dinoflagellates that can release toxins, killing fish, harming humans, and things like fertilizer runoff or warming oceans can trigger these blooms.
So they're sensitive indicators too.
Very much so. And they form vital symbiotic relationships. Dinoflagellates live inside corals, feeding them. Lose the dinoflagellates due to warming, that's coral bleaching, which devastates reefs. Other protists live in termite guts, helping them digest wood.
But some are bad news, right? Pathogens.
Absolutely. Plasmodium, the protist that causes malaria, has this incredibly complex life cycle involving mosquitoes and humans. It's a huge global health challenge. Its plastid, the apicoplast, which it got via secondary endosymbiosis from algae, is actually a unique target for drugs.
A leftover from its evolutionary past?
Exactly. And then you have things like trypanostoma, causing sleeping sickness, with its clever trick of constantly changing its surface proteins to evade our immune system. Or Phytophthora, the water mold that caused the Irish potato famine and still causes billions in crop damage today. Protists are major players, for good and ill.
Okay, so life is thriving in the oceans, diversifying, but land, for billions of years, it was pretty empty, right? How did life finally conquer the continents? That seems like a monumental challenge.
It really was. You leave the water and suddenly you have to deal with drying out desiccation. Gravity is a much bigger problem without buoyancy. Temperatures swing wildly, and there's intense UV radiation.
Sounds rough. Why bother?
The upsides were huge. Unfiltered sunlight for photosynthesis, way more CO2 available than in water, and soil packed with mineral nutrients. It was a massive untapped resource.
So who made the leap first, and what did it take?
The evidence points to plants making the transition from aquatic green algae, specifically a group called charophytes. They're the closest living relatives. This lineage gradually accumulated adaptations that allowed their descendants, the first true land plants or embryophytes, to survive ashore.
What kinds of adaptations?
Several key ones. A waxy cuticle on the outside to prevent water loss. Tiny pores called stomata to allow gas exchange for photosynthesis, but which can also close to conserve water. Apical meristems, localized regions of growth at the tips of shoots and roots, letting them grow towards resources. And durable walled spores coated in sporopollenin, allowing them to survive dispersal through dry air. We see the first fossil spores around 470 million years ago.
But plants didn't go it alone, did they? I remember reading about a partnership.
You're absolutely right. Fungi were crucial. In fact, fungi probably colonized land before plants.
Fungi first. How did they manage?
Their whole lifestyle is built around absorption. They secrete enzymes to digest food externally, then absorb the nutrients through their extensive network of thread-like hyphae, which form a mycelium. This huge surface area is great for sucking up scarce resources, and they also produce spores for dispersal.
And they help the plants.
Immensely. The key was mycorrhizae, this ancient, vital mutualism between fungi and plant roots, or root-like structures in early plants. The fungi are brilliant at extracting water and minerals, especially phosphorus, from the soil and giving them to the plant. In return, the plant gives the fungus sugars from photosynthesis.
The classic trade.
Exactly. And we have fossil evidence from 405 million years ago showing structures inside early land plants that look just like modern mycorrhizae. It strongly suggests this partnership was absolutely essential for plants to really get established on land, especially before they evolved complex root systems.
So plants are on land, partnered with fungi. How did they then diversify and basically take over?
Well, the earliest land plants were small, non-vascular ones, like mosses, bryophytes. They lacked deep roots and rigid support tissues, so they stayed low to the ground and needed moisture for sperm to swim.
Still tied to water for reproduction.
Right. The next huge innovation, around 425 million years ago, was vascular tissue. Xylem, reinforced with lignin, transports water and provides rigid structural support, allowing plants to grow tall. Phloem transports sugars. This led to the first vascular plants, initially seedless ones like ferns and club mosses.
And they formed the first forests.
Yes, around 385 million years ago. These early forests dramatically changed the landscape and atmosphere, but the ultimate adaptation for dry land came later, around 360 million years ago, with the evolution of seeds.
Seeds changed everything.
Completely. A seed packages the embryo together with a food supply inside a protective coat. It can wait for good conditions, travel long distances, and along with seeds came pollen.
Pollen, the male part.
The male gamophyte, yeah, encased in that tough sporopollenin coat. Pollen meant fertilization no longer required water. It could travel by wind or, later, by hitching a ride on animals. This freed plants from needing moist environments for reproduction.
So that led to things like conifers.
Exactly. The gymnosperms, or naked seed plants like conifers, dominated during drier periods. But the most diverse group today are the angiosperms, the flowering plants. They evolved flowers, structures specialized for attracting pollinators, and fruits, which develop from the ovary to protect the seeds and aid dispersal.
And their rise was linked to animals.
Absolutely. Co-evolution with pollinators and fruit dispersers drove this incredible diversification of flowering plants. It's why we have such a stunning variety of flowers and fruits today.
So plants and fungi colonizing land wasn't just about new species appearing. It reshaped the whole planet.
Fundamentally, all that photosynthesis drew down massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere, especially during the Carboniferous period, leading to global cooling and forming the cool beds we now use. Plant roots broke down rock, accelerating nutrient cycling. They created entirely new habitats, new food sources.
And set the stage for animals to follow them onto land.
Precisely, they created the ecosystems that animals could then move into.
All right, let's bring in the animals. We touched on their origins from protists. What defines an animal, and when did they really burst onto the scene?
Animals are typically multicellular heterotrophic eukaryotes that ingest their food. A key feature is the development of specialized tissues, particularly muscle and nerve tissues, allowing for movement and rapid responses. They're essentially mobile eating machines.
Mobile eating machines, I like that.
They evolved from those coanoflagellate-like ancestors. We see early evidence around 700 million years ago, but the first big, diverse animal fossils, the Ediacaran biota, show up around 560 million years ago, weird, soft-bodied creatures.
And then the famous Cambrian explosion happens. What was that all about?
Ah, yes, the Cambrian explosion. Roughly 535 to 525 million years ago. It wasn't an actual explosion, of course, but a relatively rapid diversification in the fossil record. Suddenly, we see the appearance of most major animal phyla that exist today, including the first animals with hard parts, shells, skeletons.
Why then? What triggered it?
Probably a combination of factors. New predator-prey relationships likely drove an evolutionary arms race, armor versus claws, speed versus stealth. Rising oxygen levels could have supported more active metabolism and larger bodies. And crucially, the evolution of the Hox gene complex.
Those developmental control genes.
Exactly. These genes regulate body plan development. Changes in how and where Hox genes were expressed could have allowed for the rapid evolution of new body forms without needing entirely new genes. It was like having a genetic toolkit that suddenly allowed much more complex structures to be built.
And many of these Cambrian animals were bilaterians.
Yes, the vast majority. Animals with bilateral symmetry, a left and right side, a front and back, top and bottom. This body plan is strongly associated with active movement and cephalization, the concentration of sensory organs at the head end.
Makes sense for hunting or escaping.
Definitely. And these bilaterians diversified incredibly. We see the evolution of different tissue layers, ectoderm, endoderm, mesoderm, and the development of a body cavity or colon in many groups.
What's the benefit of a body cavity?
It provides space for organs to develop and function, cushions them, and in soft-bodied animals, the fluid inside can act as a hydrostatic skeleton for movement. It was another key innovation.
So looking at this vast diversity, invertebrates are the huge majority, right?
Overwhelmingly so. 95% of animal species. Arthropods alone, insects, spiders, crustaceans are staggeringly successful. Think segmented bodies, jointed limbs, and that hard exoskeleton.
The exoskeleton seems key for land life, too.
Absolutely. Protection, support against gravity, prevents drying out. Insects, a subgroup of arthropods, became the masters of land, partly thanks to the evolution of wings, another game changer, allowing dispersal and access to new resources, like flowering plants.
And then the vertebrates arrive on the scene, part of the chordate group.
Yes, vertebrates are chordates. Chordates share features like a notochord, a dorsal nerve cord, pharyngeal slits at some stage. Early vertebrates lacked jaws, but then came the gnathostomes, the jawed vertebrates, around 440 million years ago.
Jaws were a big deal.
Huge. Jaws, likely evolved from skeletal supports of the pharyngeal slits, allowed animals to grip food firmly, bite off chunks. Paired fins also evolved, making them much better swimmers. This opened up new predatory lifestyles. Within this group, the lobe fins are particularly important.
Because they led to us. Well, to land vertebrates.
Exactly. Lobe fins had fleshy, muscular fins supported by bone rather than just skin webs. One lineage of lobe fins gave rise to the tetrapods, the four-limbed vertebrates.
Okay, the transition to land for animals. How did these lobe fins manage it?
Around 365 million years ago, we see fossils like Tiktaalik showing intermediate features, fins with basic wrist bones, a neck allowing the head to move independently. The key adaptations for life on land were limbs with digits robust enough to support weight and changes to the skeleton for support and movement.
But they weren't fully terrestrial yet.
No, early tetrapods were likely still tied to water, much like modern amphibians, frogs, salamanders. Amphibians often have aquatic larvae, breathe through moist skin as well as lungs, and lay shellless eggs that need water.
And they're facing tough times now.
Sadly, yes. Amphibian populations are declining dramatically worldwide due to habitat loss, climate change, pollution, and devastating diseases like chytrid fungus. It's a stark reminder of ongoing evolutionary pressures.
So who conquered land more completely?
The amniotes. This group includes reptiles, birds, and mammals. They evolved around 350 million years ago, and their key innovation was the amniotic egg.
The self-contained pond.
That's a great way to put it. The amniotic egg has membranes that protect the embryo, provide nutrition, store waste, and facilitate gas exchange, all within a shell, or retained internally in most mammals. This completely freed reproduction from water. Like seeds for plants, it was revolutionary.
What else helped them?
More efficient breathing, using the rib cage to ventilate the lungs, and less permeable skin to conserve water. Reptiles diversified widely, including dinosaurs and eventually birds, which are essentially feathered endothermic reptiles. And then mammals emerged, characterized by hair, mammary glands, endothermy, and generally larger brains.
Which brings us towards our own story. Where do humans fit into this grand animal narrative?
We are mammals, specifically primates, and our lineage, the hominins, split off from other apes maybe 6 or 7 million years ago in Africa. A key early development was bipedalism, walking upright.
And that came before big brains.
Yes, that was a major realization. Fossils like Lucy, Australopithecus, and even earlier ones like Ardipithecus show adaptations for upright walking, but still had relatively small brains. Tool use also appears relatively early. Large brains came later in the genus Homo.
So walking freed the hands, which maybe spurred tool use and eventually brain growth.
That's one leading hypothesis, yes. Homo sapiens, our species, emerged in Africa around 200,000 years ago and subsequently spread across the globe, encountering and sometimes interbreeding with other hominins like Neanderthals.
And Neanderthals had large brains too, right?
They did, even slightly larger than ours on average. They used tools, buried their dead, had complex behaviors. The story of human evolution is still being uncovered, especially with advances in ancient DNA analysis.
So looking back at the animal kingdom's journey, from tiny beginnings to global players, what's their overall impact?
Animals have fundamentally reshaped ecosystems. The Cambrian explosion with filter feeders and predators changed ocean dynamics. The move to land created complex terrestrial food webs. Animal diversification spurred evolution in other groups, think plant defenses against herbivores or the coevolution of parasites and hosts.
And now, we are the animals having the biggest impact.
Undeniably, human activities are now a major selective force. Antibiotic use drives resistance in bacteria. Fishing pressure selects for fish that mature younger and smaller. We are causing habitat loss and climate change at unprecedented rates, potentially triggering the planet's 6th mass extinction. But we also have the capacity through science to understand this history and potentially mitigate our impact.
It's an absolutely incredible saga, from non-living chemistry in that primordial soup, through the long reign of prokaryotes engineering the planet, the eukaryotic revolution of complexity and cooperation, plants and fungi greening the continents, and then this explosive diversification of animals leading, eventually, to us sitting here talking about it.
It really is. And the key takeaway is that interconnectedness. It's not just a list of events. It's a continuous tapestry. And a symbiosis built eukaryotes. Mycorrhizae helped plants conquer land. Animal pollinators drove angiosperm success. Each step built on what came before, constrained by history, but always exploring new possibilities through natural selection.
It transforms biology from just facts
Yeah.
into this dynamic, unfolding story.
Hmm.
Understanding this deep history really provides the context for everything else, how organisms work, how ecosystems function, how life continues to evolve right now. It sets the stage beautifully. So what's the next chapter in this evolutionary story? That's something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the grand tapestry of life. Keep asking questions, keep exploring.